Welcome everyone to Not That Media. My name is John and in today's video I'm going over my July Blu-ray, DVD and 4K purchases. So come along with me as we do another horror haul. So like with my previous vlogs, July was a little bit of a mixed bag. A few DVDs, quite a few Blu-rays and a couple of 4K, variations of readily available, some out of print and some limited edition. So we'll go through each in turn. I'll talk about them a little bit. If obviously there's information to provide on screen, that will appear. If they're out of stock, out of print, etc. So let's just get jumping into it with the DVDs. So starting with an unusual one, which is always fun to do, Nothing But Trouble. This is a Region 1 DVD. I don't believe there is a UK available release, although it is available streaming. I think you have to pay for it. It's co-written, directed and starring Dan Aykroyd with Chevy Chase, Demi Moore and John Candy, which is a quartet of actors I never even knew were in the same stratosphere, let alone in the same film together. It's really hard to describe this film is what I would say. If you are a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and a fan of House of a Thousand Corpses, this film is the closest I can actually kind of put into a category. I would probably say that's a bit of a trilogy, although this will be the weakest in terms of violence and gore. That just totally off the wall, insane characters in an insane situation, just hyper reality, totally over the top. I think it exists with those two films as well. So in a nutshell, Chevy Chase plays a businessman who is on the way to a conference of some description. He meets a recently separated Demi Moore and tries to woo her. Eventually he agrees to take her to her destination, where she's looking to go, and on the way they get stopped by the police, which is played by John Candy. Having tried to be clever and outrun him, he promptly arrests them, but rather than take them to the police, he takes them to the local judge, who is played by Dan Aykroyd. I believe the character is at least 107, and it is just completely crazy in that his idea of the punishment meeting the crime and what he does when he finds people guilty is just, it's essentially murder. I don't want to say too much more because I think this is one of those films that you should really watch with no information. If you like Dan Aykroyd, if you want to see, and I appreciate people say this about Ghostbusters, but if you want to see Dan Aykroyd unplugged, like completely free and can do what he wants, this is your film. It is funny, it is horrifying, it is grotesque, it is really strange in that at one point in the film, a little known at the time Tupac makes an appearance. So if you're a Tupac fan out there and you're looking to see him in his first film, this is it. This film was a colossal failure, is what I will tell you. The film had a budget of 35 million and it made 8 million. I think, if I'm being honest, it was way ahead of the time. I don't think people knew what they were looking at, but I actually really recommend this film. This is just a crazy film that maybe you got a few people round, or maybe you just want to put something a bit off the wall on and just sit and have a laugh. This is that film, but I'm not going to say much more on it because I just don't want it to get spoiled. So the next one that I purchased on the DVD, and the last of the DVDs, is Prom Knight, the Hamilton High Collection. This contains all 4 movies in the Prom Knight collection. It is out of print at the time of recording, and this is a Region 2 release. The first one probably needs no introduction. It's the Jamie Lee Curtis during her Scream Queen era movie, where she is stalked, very similar to Halloween, by a slasher. Prom Night 2, which is what I wanted to actually purchase this box set for, which is one of the greatest titles I've ever heard to a horror film, just because of that, well, Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. I think someone deserves an award just for the name of that title. Prom Night 2 has the odd distinction of having absolutely nothing to do with Prom Night 1. So this is not a Halloween 2 or Friday the 13th Part 2 situation. Prom Night 2, the only similarity between the two films is the name of the high school. And there's even a little bit of a blurb on the inside of this box to suggest that the film was actually made with no connection to Prom Night, and perhaps somebody rather cleverly discovered, oh, these two high schools have the same name in these two movies. Let's stick Prom Night 2 on the box and cash in on it. The film is totally different. Whereas the first one is a slasher, this is very much a supernatural ghost kind of possession film. The title character, Mary Lou, is the prom queen in 1957, and similar to Carrie, very bad things happen and she ends up dead at the end, at the beginning, sorry, I should say, at the end of the prom, but at the beginning of the movie. Her spirit is then reawakened 30 30 years later, and she gets her sights on a young aspiring girl who's a little bit nerdy, doesn't have too many friends, and the spirit of Mary Lou proceeds to take her over and starts to do bad things as a result. It is very mid-80s horror. It is not high caliber in terms of acting or scenery. It is all filmed, I think, on a location in a high school. It's really good though. The Mary Lou practical effects when she appears in her burnt state is really well done. It's just a harmless 80s horror film, but it is a strong recommend. If you can find a physical copy. If you can stream it, great, but finding a copy of this is either really expensive or really difficult. And as I say, I have no aspirations to actually watch Prom Night 3 and 4, even though Mary Lou features again. I will probably one other day sit and watch those just for a completionist's sake, but I wanted the box set purely for Prom Night 2. So I only bought 2 new releases in July, and the first was Abigail. Now, I went to see Abigail in the cinema. I had a really good time, so did my wife. It is a very fun film, is what I would say. Personally, I do feel that the trailer spoiled the film entirely. Not to criticize it in too much detail, because I don't want to do too much of a film review now, but this film is, I believe, nearly 2 hours, and I would say the first 45 minutes is predicated around the idea that there is some kind of secret. In a nutshell, without spoiling too much, a group of less than nice people, thieves, con artists, and all this kind of stuff are brought together, slightly kind of Suicide Squad style, to abduct this little girl. And they are placed in this house with her and told, basically, if you survive the night, you will get a multi-million payout. And they all think, well, this is an easy gig, so why not? But Abigail's got a secret, and for the 1% of people who might have no idea what this film's about, I'm not going to spoil it and say what her secret is, but the film obviously then goes from there and it kicks off really well. It was done by the director, I believe, of Ready or Not and Scream 5 and 6, so it's very much in the vein of slightly self-aware characters making fun of the situation. It's high on gore in terms of when things happen, they happen. It's not like Megan, where I think they cut out a lot of the gore at the last minute to try and bring it down to a 15 to get obviously more, kids in the cinema. This is a solid film. It's a good time. Again, similar to Prom Night 2. This isn't about being moved or anything like that. This is just about having a crazy bit of fun. The little girl who plays Abigail is spectacular, but I do feel that if you've seen the trailer, you may be very bored for the first 45 minutes of this film, because the trailer spoils a major part of this story. So, but don't be detracted. If you did like the look of it, do definitely watch it. It is a good time. So this next one, and it's literally hot off the press. I think I got it, I think today is a Wednesday, maybe Thursday at the time of recording, but I received this on the Monday, so I've only had it a couple of days. This is one which I find very unique in that it's a George Romero movie that came out in the year 2000. So outside of, say, for example, George's golden era and perhaps even his silver era when he returned for Land of the Dead and so on, it's 2000's Bruiser. Now, I have to confess, I have no idea what this film's about. I've deliberately not done any research, so if you're expecting a synopsis, I can't give you one. The reason that I wanted this film is, A, it's a George Romero film. I love George Romero. I was lucky enough to meet him many years ago, and any George Romero film I'm more than happy to buy and take that chance. I know some of them are not as great as others, but I think George has a consistent batting average, which is very strong. Curiously though about this one, this is a limited edition, and there are 2 iterations of this. There's a 4K and there's a Blu-ray. Now, the reason I didn't buy the 4K, because some of you might think, well, why would you not buy the 4K, is the limited edition nature of this. There's only 7,000 of this being printed and created. 5,000 of it are 4K, but only 2,000 are Blu-ray. So as a collector, and bearing in mind the majority of my collection is Blu-ray when it comes to George Romero movies, I thought, well, clearly the 2000 would be the more valuable long term, so I want it. And this is indeed number 1620 of 2000. Ironically, there isn't any information on the back in terms of synopsis. There isn't any information on the front, other than it says this is a new 4K restoration of Romero's 2000 triumph return to independent filmmaking. This very strictly limited edition, individually numbered Blu-ray edition contains a host of new and archive extras. You can't go wrong with Romero, I would say. So yeah, I can't say it's a recommend because I haven't seen it, but if you're a collector out there who wants to make sure they got their hands on a limited edition piece of Romero history, Bruiser is out now and will probably sell out fast. So for this next section, I kind of always nickname it the miscellaneous section, in that it's not a new release, it's not a DVD. These are just random Blu-rays that I have purchased for one reason or another. Again, I'm going to speed through these because I want to keep these videos short. So the first is The Last Showing. Now, The Last Showing came out, I believe, 2014 and starred Robert Englund. Again, this is not a film that I have spent a lot of time researching. I remember the trailers, and it seemed to be that Robert Englund, because I haven't watched this at the time of recording, Robert Englund is an old school cinema projectorist who is fired and takes it upon himself to basically become a killer and start killing a lot of young people in the cinema because they don't appreciate horror, or that he wants to create his own snuff film. Indeed, let's have a quick look at the back. It says, experience real terror, yada yada yada. Trapping a young couple inside the cinema during a midnight screening, he sets a deadly plot in motion to make them the unwitting stars of their own chilling horror film. I remember when this came out, it was one of those films that kind of came and went. Like, it was quite exciting to think that Robert Englund was playing something outside of Freddy, and it was maybe a new horror character, embracing his age a little bit, it would be said, and an opportunity to see him do something a bit different. The film came, I think it was quite forgettable, even though it did get good reviews, and I had forgotten about it for years and years and years. And like I do sometimes when I scroll through eBay just looking for random things, it does obviously recommend, oh, you might like this, you might like that. So I think I'd been looking into Nightmare on Elm Street, like Blu-rays or 4Ks and things like that. So obviously Robert Englund ended up in my algorithm. This appeared, it was £6.99. This is out of print everywhere that I could find, all the major retailers in the UK. This is a Region B Blu-ray, by the way. So the seller, this was brand new in cellophane, £6.99 on eBay. An absolute bargain, but again, just one that I wanted in the collection. It wouldn't be a haul if I didn't include a Halloween film, and this month was no exception. I have all the Halloween films, and I own many different iterations of the Halloween films, but if I see a bargain and it's going for the right price and the right condition, I will pick it up if there's something in there that I want. And this month, it was the unrated producer's edition of Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Keeping this as brief as I can, the unrated producer's cut, we might as well call it the producer's cut. This says unrated, but as far as I'm aware, there's actually no difference between any other version of the producer's cut that have been released, but this is the only one that I think says unrated. For those of you who are not in the know, and I will keep this very brief because I do want to do videos in the future, in 1994/5, when this film was being created, it starred a very elderly Donald Pleasance and a very young nobody by the name of Paul Rudd. Whatever happened to that guy, we don't know. The film set out to answer the mystery of Michael Myers. What's it all about? Why does he target his family? Why does he have a tattoo on his wrist? Who is the mysterious man in black? Why does he only ever appear at Halloween? This film was designed to answer all of those questions. It was the first time the Accards, I should say, were working with a major studio, Miramax in this case, and that was under the supervision of the Weinsteins at the time. The film had its first rough cut and had been filmed as much as they could, and when it was presented to the Weinsteins, they test screened it with, apparently the legend goes, a load of 14-year-old boys, and when feedback and comment cards were completed, one particularly poetic gentleman apparently wrote, "The movie sucks." Now, whilst this was happening, sadly Donald Pleasance passed away. So what then happened was the film was then rushed into production once again, and about 2/3 of what is now known the producer's cut was removed, and the theatrical version of Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, was released, which had very little Donald Pleasance, a little bit more Paul Rudd, some fantastic kills, but really and I love this film for the record, without trying to show my hand too much for future videos, I love the theatrical version of Halloween 6, but when you look at it as a piece of filmmaking, it is an incoherent mess. This film is considerably better when it comes to storytelling, but even this is an incomplete movie. So this is as close to the original vision of Halloween 6 that we will ever get. I think it's a good film. I think if you're a completionist, you should always seek out this version. I wanted it because, ironically, I think 5 years ago, maybe even a little bit less than 5 years ago, you could not buy the producer's cut of Halloween 6. This fabled version of Halloween 6 that was meant to be so much better and had 70 minutes of different footage in it and so much more Donald Pleasance and felt more like a Halloween film. This film does, whereas the theatrical uses a lot more kind of electronic sting music and lots of fast MTV style cuts. This feels like a Halloween movie. It was filmed around October time, so it looks like a Halloween film. Donald Pleasance gives his very best performance. But anyway, my point is this fabled producer's cut. I remember a very long time ago, maybe 2002, 2003, watching it on an AOL real-time square, and the square was probably about that big, and seeing these fantastic images of the different endings and the different versions of the kills. It was this kind of monolith in the Halloween genre of this missing film. The fact that we went from having nothing to multiple Blu-rays and a 4K just means, as a fan, I just wanted to own a copy by itself on Blu-ray, as opposed to it's not a 4K in a box or anything like that. So you don't have to seek out this version, is what I would say. I would actually say that the Scream Factory 4K, the Blu-ray is region locked, but the 4K is region free. If you can get your hands on the 4K Curse of Michael Myers Scream Factory, you get both this version and the theatrical version. So if you're a collector or you're looking to buy these, I probably wouldn't buy this unless you're like me and you're OCD about owning as many versions of Halloween as possible. Okay, so keeping in the slasher mentality, I'll talk very quickly about this one because it's one I haven't seen, but I know its reputation. The Prowler, which is another 80s slasher. I wanted this purely because Tom Savini, by his own comment, states that this is his favourite film, and he thinks that the effects that he did, obviously, in this film are some of the best violent effects he's ever done. It has some notoriety in the slasher genre as being just a nasty slasher film. I can't say too much more than that because I haven't seen it. I've seen clips and it does look to be a bit out there. It's even advertising on the back as one of the slasher genre's finest moments, so I look forward to watching it. It's a Region 1 Blu-ray, it's from Blue Underground. It was another eBay, but I look forward to watching it. This next one I was actually really impressed with for a couple of reasons. The first, well, I'll tell you what it is first. It's called the McPherson tape, and this is actually the alternative cover here, the UFO Abduction. Now, this is touted and claimed to be the world's first found footage horror film. It came out, I think, nearly a full decade before the Blair Witch Project, and I have to confess, I did see it a couple of years ago, and me and my wife, when we watched it, we actually assumed it was actually newer than, we didn't realise this was an late 80s horror film. It's all done, I think it cost $6,000 to get made, and we were looking into this a little bit, maybe for a future video, and this is similar to Ghost Watch, and if you're a comedy fan, The Day-to-Day and Brass Eye, people thought this was real. People thought this was a real UFO abduction tape. The McPherson tape was believed to be real. There is on this Blu-ray a documentary or footage of real news journalists covering this on like the 6 o'clock American news, and real UFO scientists talking about how when they received this tape they thought it was real, and when it was one of those films where it was passed around like the VHS, pre-internet obviously and all this kind of stuff, but it was passed around the VHS networks, and the alien abductees network would hand this round to each other saying, here is proof of alien abduction. It's only an hour. It's actually pretty good, is what I would say, for the money they had. And it is a family, so you have an older actor, you have children. There's no effects, is what I would say, in terms of like camera trickery in the kind of CG fashion. But it's filmed very well. And if there are multiple takes, which there must be somewhere, I couldn't see the split, is what I would say. It's handled very well. It treats itself very seriously, but it feels really real. So as much as the Blair Witch Project deserves to be maybe recognised as the first financially profitable found footage movie, apparently this is the first found footage horror film. At the time of recording, 101 Films is doing a sale, so I picked this up for £8. It is region B, so obviously be careful if you are abroad, but this film is a strong recommend. And again, that's the McPherson tape, otherwise known as UFO Abduction. So the last in the miscellaneous section, I'm just going to skim straight through this one. Again, it's one I haven't had time to watch, but it was purchased a little bit more more for a laugh than anything. I saw it in HMV for a fiver, and I thought, yeah, why not? It is a maybe forgotten or unwanted, or perhaps rightly forgotten, Wes Craven's shocker. Now, I wanted this because it stars, let me just find his name, Mitch Pileggi, I believe his name is, who fans of the X-Files will recognise him as Skinner. In a nutshell, he plays a serial killer who is put on death row and electrocuted, but rather than die, he becomes pure electricity and goes on his killing spree once again. That's all I can say about the film. I think that's all you need to know about the film, to be honest. If you're a fan of Wes Craven and you're a completionist, then there's another one for the collection. If you like Skinner from X-Files and you want to see more of him, this is a few years before that film, before that TV show, I should say, this is it. I'm not expecting high art, but sometimes you just want a cheeseburger. You know, you just want to have something bad. You know it's not going to be good for you, but you'll have a good time watching it. These four titles, I'm just going to box together in one go because I actually intend to spend a little bit more time on a different video talking about these, so I'm not going to talk into too much detail about them. But I picked up all three of these online. Note the word three, but there are actually four. It is the Night of the Demons trilogy, the original trilogy. I believe the first film was 1988, the second film 1994, and the third film 1997. There is a terrible remake from what I've heard that came out in the late noughties, but I have no intention of buying that. I also, as a result of an error from an eBay seller when buying Night of the Demons 3, I also ended up picking up the new Night of the Demons 4K, which has only just been released. So I do have two copies of Night of the Demons. I did reach out to the seller and he basically said, I can't bother to sort this out anymore, you keep it. So, okay, fine. What I would say to that, of course, is Night of the Demons 3 was such a experience that I was glad I had this for free, because I probably would have wanted my money back if I'm being totally honest. But as completionist collectors, we have to go through the worst as much as we go through the best. I wanted, one of the reasons I was actually happy to get the 4K of Night of the Demons, just to touch on this in a little bit of detail, is that this version contains, as does actually the Night of the Demons 3 recently released for Blu-ray of this from Scream Factory, they both contain what's called a work print. Now, I'm not sure, for newbies or, you know, people who are not necessarily aware of this, films are more often than not will obviously have an initial cut, not necessarily a director's cut, but an early cut that they present to the studio, and they either get it vetoed or changes are made based on that. So the work print for Night of the Demons 1 and Night of the Demons 3 contains a considerably larger amount of footage difference, and in fact the name Night of the Demons is actually different. It was originally supposed to be called Halloween Party, so this even has the original Halloween Party graphics in it. This film is a piece of 80s nostalgia. I didn't see it in the 80s, but Angela's presence and the image of Angela in her demonic black wedding dress floating down the corridor towards the camera was one of those images that when I saw it stuck with me. And I have to confess, it took me a very long time to watch this, because I'm not or get round to buying and watching these films, because I'm not a big fan of demonic possession or just possession in general. I find it quite frightening. So the idea of the image, as I say, of Angela floating down the corridor, I always found that quite scary. But having watched this film, I actually think this film really holds up, as does the second one. The third one, I'm not going to talk about too much, because although it is an inferior quality to the first two, like I say, if you like the character, if you want to see more, then obviously great, you can watch the third one. But Night of the Demons 1 is a massive recommend. So moving into 4Ks, and all these next ones are going to be Scream Factory as well. We're going to leap straight in. It's celebrating its 40th anniversary next year. Return of the Living Dead. I wanted Return of the Living Dead because off the back of watching Night of the Demons, it featured Linnea Quigley, who also appears in many other films, but again, that's a video for another day. She's making her appearance at For the Love of Horror. So I thought, well, what else can we get? What else is out there? And her notoriety is almost, this is the breakout role, is what I would say of Return of the Living Dead. What I would also say, of course, with a hint of irony and comedy, is having wanted to see more of Linnea Quigley in her movies, you see a lot more of Linnea Quigley in this movie. So I'm just giving you that up front. Just you may be very happy to hear that, you may be very unhappy to hear that. But in a nutshell, this kind of exists as a kind of a sister franchise to Night of the Living Dead. The co-writer, creator of Night of the Living Dead, John Russo, he went off in this direction, which is the Return of the Living Dead, and Romero went off in his Of the Dead. In a nutshell, This takes place years after a zombie outbreak has taken place, and due to a bumbled delivery, some vats of what you think might be chemical waste are in a mortuary, but they actually have zombies inside them. A pair of unwitting fools, one played by, I believe, Tom Matthews from Friday the 13th success, he played Tommy Jarvis, accidentally knocks one of them and the liquid is released, the gas is released into the air, and the zombie wakes up. The zombie problem is released via the airborne toxins, but also the problem is once one zombie is dealt with, they burn the body, and the vapor and the toxic zombie atmosphere goes into the atmosphere, where it promptly rains, and everybody within the distance, living, dead, in the ground or wherever, all come to life. So before you know it, there's a full zombie epidemic going on. This film is made I don't want to say for laughs in that it's a comedy, but this is a funny film. It is so 80s. If you love 80s nostalgia, if you love like punk chic and 80s music, this is your film. The effects are fantastic as well in this film. The zombies in this film are very different from George Romero zombies and other kind of zombies. In fact, I will say for the record, the zombies run in this film. Whilst, and I say this with all the love in the world, whilst George Romero may be recognized as the creator of the modern zombie, and we owe him a lot, like things like The Walking Dead and all that kind of stuff owe him a debt. When people talk about zombies, majority of what they are saying, whether they know it or not, is from this film. The idea of zombies talking and saying brains and wanting to eat brains comes from A Return of the Living Dead. Now, the 4K itself is a fantastic restoration, and the two Blu-rays have a plethora of extras. There is a huge 2-hour documentary where they've got everybody in it. It's got all kinds of, as I say, all kinds of documentaries. It's got Horror's Hallowed Grounds by Sean Clark, one of my favourite YouTubers, internet personalities. Sean Clark is fantastic, and his name is on here as well with Horror's Hallowed Grounds. Won't be the first on this video I mention, but this is a solid release. It came out, I believe, 2022, so a couple of years ago. If you wanted to have a 40th anniversary release, this is the 40th anniversary release. We just got it early, so if you can snag a copy, if you've got a region-free Blu-ray player, definite recommend. So the last 4K in Scream Factory, just jumping straight into it, is Evil Dead, the 2013 iteration of Evil Dead. Not the remake, as everybody likes to say it, because as we know from Evil Dead Rise, Evil Dead exists within the same continuity. In a nutshell, it is exactly like Evil Dead, saying it's not a remake. A group of kids go to a cabin, they open up the Necronomicon, or a Necronomicon, and possession takes place, bodily dismemberment is required, and monsters and demons start to show up. The film bins its comedic edge of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness and goes full horror. At the time of recording, the director of this film has also has got the new Alien Romulus movie coming out, and if Alien Romulus is half of what this film is, that is going to be in for a good time. This film is brutal. It doesn't pack any punches. It shows you everything you want to see. Every piece of glass going in something, every nail gun fire, every burn, everything. You see everything in this film. So this is, if you're an Evil Dead franchise fan, it probably needs no introduction. But if you're a newbie to the Evil Dead universe, Evil Dead is probably as hard as it gets in terms of gore and violence. Evil Dead Rise is not too far behind it, and I would argue Evil Dead Rise is a superior film. But if you're just looking for a down, dirty, dark, scary film, this is it. It's got a few decent extras, nothing that's new. It's got the new 4K restoration, but it's got a couple of features. It's got a commentary. I wanted it just to complete the collection with the 4K. It came with the cardboard case, which is always nice for Scream Factory. If you're collectors, you'll know what I'm talking about there, but if you're not, Scream Factory, when they release first waves of their Blu-rays and 4Ks, tend to have these kind of cardboard cases. It means the value of them is considerably higher than just the standard release, and people sell just the cardboard alone on eBay for exorbitant prices. So really happy to have this, and I believe, in fact, yes, I know it does, that completes my 4K collection of the Evil Dead movie franchise. So these next four, I'm just going to literally jump them together in the interest of time because they're all John Carpenter movies, they're all Scream Factory movies, and 3 out of 4 of them I have seen, so in no particular order. In the Mouth of Madness, starring a younger Sam Neill. We've got another iteration of Halloween 3, the Scream Factory release. We've got a little remembered and little known, but really good Someone's Watching Me. And then the fourth is the Scream Factory version of Village of the Damned. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, you will know I already own a copy of Village of the Damned and Halloween 3 on Blu-ray. The main reason that I wanted the Village of the Damned version of, the Scream Factory version of Village of the Damned is it's got all the extras on it. I paid a very low price and it's got the extras. It's got another Horrors Hallowed Ground with Sean Clark. It's got interviews. It's got a documentary. So if you want just a standard version of Village of the Damned, you just want to watch the movie, you're not bothered about extras, go and pick up the £5 Blu-ray from HMV, which is Region B. This is Region A. But as I say, I just wanted it more out of the fact that it had the extras than the film itself. I think it's a solid film. If you watch my John Carpenter gold and silver level videos, you'll know where I place this in the plethora of John Carpenter movies. Halloween 3, again, being totally honest, similar to Halloween 6, I bought this because I got it cheap. This is the 30th anniversary Silver Shamrock edition. It has no new extras in terms of if you own any of the other Scream Factory versions, but it has got a Horrors Hallowed Ground with Sean Clark. It's got the standalone documentary. It's got the commentaries. It's got all the bits and pieces you want it. I really like the artwork. I like the Silver Shamrock logo. Again, another cardboard release, which I was really happy to get my hands on. But again, I think Halloween 3 doesn't quite get the love it deserves. And I actually own Halloween 3 the least. So sometimes when you see the price is right, you just got to pick it up, and that's Region A. In the Mouth of Madness, I'm not going to say too much about because I don't actually know much about this because I haven't seen it, but it was one of the, I was aware of it, and the image of Sam Neill with all the crosses in the cinema is a very well-used meme and gif, so you probably recognise that. But it says, Suter Kane is the best-selling author whose newest novel is literally driving readers insane. When he inexplicably vanishes, the publisher, played by Charlton Heston, sends special investigator John Trent, who is Sam Neill, to track him down. Drawn to a town that exists only in Kane's books, Trent crosses the barriers between fact and fiction and enters a terrifying world in which there is no escape. Inspired by the tales of H.P. Lovecraft. This also kind of reminds me, it kind of gives me a bit of Alan Wake vibes. Again, I haven't seen the film, so I don't know if that's true, but the whole stepping into the story kind of a thing gives me those. Again, you can't get this in the UK, which is again yet another Region A Scream Factory release, but it's got a plethora of extras, another Horrors Hallowed Ground. It's got interviews with the actors. It's got a new commentary with John Carpenter. So I'm looking forward to that. I think John Carpenter, like George Romero, more often when he swings, he hits as opposed to missing. And I think this is actually regarded very highly in the John Carpenter franchise. So this last one, Someone's Watching Me, is quite an interesting one in that it's very bare bones in terms of extras. It has got a Horrors Hallowed Grounds on it though with Sean Clark. Horrors Hallowed Ground seems to be all over the Halloween franchise, the John Carpenter world I should say, and I'm not complaining. This is actually a TV movie, a little remembered John Carpenter TV movie. He wrote and directed it, but he created it before Halloween, but it was released after Halloween. So it came and went. It was a TV movie, the event of the week kind of thing. It's got Adrienne Barbeau in it. In a nutshell, a lady moves into a high-rise apartment, and when she moves in, she starts to receive letters and gifts relating to a kind of holiday special, winning something. It then turns out that there is somebody in the property opposite her, because it's 2 high towers, who is watching her and calling her and breaking into her home when she's not there. And I don't want to say too much more because it's actually a very good mystery and it's got a very slow burn. It's not particularly scary. It's not particularly gory. I think and he's on record saying it. John Carpenter actually went on to say that most of the lessons he learnt in this film he then applied to Halloween. So a lot of the wider shots, the person in the background, the paying attention to what's going on kind of thing. This film, he did it first. But as I say, it's got Adrienne Barbeau in it. And interestingly, it actually, for a film that came out in 1978, it actually has quite a positive lesbian representation in it. Adrienne Barbeau plays a lesbian character, but she is not a cliche cliche. She is not there to titillate. She is not there for reaction. It's actually a really, really well put together kind of, as early as I can know about, and Adrienne Barbeau is interviewed on this and she says it herself, that she thinks it's one of the very earliest presentations of a lesbian which is not a joke or a sex symbol. She is presented in the film as a normal human being with ideas and thoughts and all this kind of stuff. So it was quite interesting. You know, I find these days when you go back and watch these old kind of films, representation of certain parties is not there. So for it to just be part of the story, well, it wasn't even a big deal. She just drops the ball and says, yeah, oh, yeah, by the way, it's not even, she doesn't even sit there and say, I'm a lesbian. She just sits there and she makes comments to the fact that she might like the girl and all this kind of stuff. So I was really impressed with that, and I think it just shows the kind of forward-thinking John Carpenter has. It's full of suspense. It also has, I can never remember his name, Charles Cyphers, that's his name. Charles Cyphers, who Halloween fans will know as Sheriff Brackett in Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and Halloween Kills. He is also in this film playing a cop. I'm not sure if he's a sheriff, but he's definitely a cop. So it's ironic that two films back-to-back John Carpenter made had Charles Cyphers in both as a cop. So this is a really big recommend, and I bought this to be a completionist, but I was so impressed with this that I actually am toying with the idea of getting Adrienne Barbeau to actually sign this at this year's For the Love of Horror Con, because this was a really good film. So the last three in the Scream Factory, and the last three of the video, we'll go through very quickly, is Carrie, again, the original Carrie with Sissy Spacek. I wanted this because although I already owned the Arrow Video Blu-ray, which was released in the UK many years ago in the hard rigid case with the poster and the book, again, the price was right on this. I think I only paid maybe £10 for this. It's got the cardboard case again, so obviously that increases its collectability, but this had different extras, which is why I wanted it. The film is exactly the same as far as I'm aware, but it has new interviews, a new documentary. It's got a Horrors Hallowed Grounds on it with Sean Clark, Sissy Spacek interview, all kinds of bits and pieces in it. As a Stephen King fan, I never turn over an idea that it doesn't look good, a price that doesn't look good. Carrie's a great film. I was just happy to buy it. 13 Ghosts. Now 13 Ghosts is a film that I have to confess I was fully aware of, as is any horror fan from the early noughties, but I had never seen, and I bought it more because my wife was interested in seeing it, because it was always one of those films that it was always going on about in the early noughties. So again, the price was good on this one. It is another Scream Factory release. It has a load of extras, double-sided cover and all kinds of bits and pieces. It's got a great cast. It's got Shannon Elizabeth during that early noughties boom when she was in Scary Movie, American Pie, a few other bits and pieces, and 13 Ghosts. It's got Matthew Lillard, hot off the heels of his Scream appearance, and I believe, I'm not sure he was in Scooby-Doo at this point yet, but he was still in that kind of early boom period in the early noughties. It's also got the guy, I think he played Monk. He's certainly the guy in the pawn shop in Men in Black 1 and 2, in arguably the title character. Not the title character because the title's 13 Ghosts, but kind of the main character. In a nutshell, he plays a husband whose wife dies in a fire, and he is left with two children. One of them, Shannon Elizabeth, who again I think is meant to be maybe 16 in the film, but Shannon Elizabeth was not 16 in that film, and a young boy. They have no money, everything's going wrong, and they then find out that their, I think an uncle has died and left them great riches, so they think, oh great. So they go to this property which looks like something out of Hellraiser, this huge glass property with no windows, no walls. It's all glass and it all looks like a giant timepiece with all kind of moving parts and bits and pieces. And outside, and I neglected to mention the beginning bit of it, but outside is Matthew Lillard pretending to be an electrician. And it turns out when they go into the house that the house has 12 ghosts in it, hidden in the basement, because the uncle, as well as being an adventurer, he was also a capturer of ghosts. This guy has plans to open a mouth of hell, I think it is, using 13 ghosts, and the whole point of it is that essentially they need to try and escape before the 13 ghosts all combine and open this gateway. It is It is okay, is what I would say. I know that's a very bad synopsis I've just given you, but it is an okay movie. I think the concept is very good, not very well executed. The ghosts, who I haven't bothered to mention so far, the 12 ghosts that you see, they're all great. They're all very, very individual. They look fantastic, but they're given such little screen time that it almost becomes annoying that you see the jackal, for example, which is the one with the box on its head. The jackal is quite frightening, and all the prosthetics, all the makeup, all the effects for the ghost, they all look great. You just don't get to see them very much. And the film does this really odd thing, which in the noughties, for some reason we were doing it, where we would just slow down shots for no reason. So there's a shot of Shannon Elizabeth in a bathroom where she's running water. Apologies, people, no, it doesn't go where you think it is. You've got American Pie for that. But she's turning the tap and it's slow and there's just no reason for it. And when they're running from the ghost, it's slow. But then when they show the ghost, it's running really quickly. So it gives this kind of Monty Python style like atmosphere where it just feels like the film. In fact, I think when we watched it, me and my wife, she said to me, did this film just not have a good enough runtime? Because the film is just slow. But I think that's a visual aesthetic that they were doing in the noughties. So if you, and I'm sure many do, if you hold this film in high esteem because obviously you saw it when you were the appropriate age, this is very much a teenage horror film. I think people are quick to criticize teenage horror these days with things like Megan and all that kind of stuff. But actually 13 Ghosts is in that pantheon as far as I'm concerned. So, I wouldn't recommend this film, if I'm being honest. I think it now has a place in the world of nostalgia. But if you like early noughties films, if you like Shannon Elizabeth, if you like Matthew Lillard, who's obviously just had his big return with Five Nights at Freddy's, so if you're looking for more stuff like that, 13 Ghosts is your film. And the very last, which I have to confess, I don't think I was drunk when I ordered this, but I didn't remember bidding on it. So when I only paid £4.99 for it, I was very happy. But the last Scream Factory release is Urban Legend. It's in the cardboard case, which is great. I already own the trilogy, the UK trilogy of the Urban Legend films. And I think the only reason I wanted this, the more I think about it, is because Rebecca, I believe her name is Rebecca Gayheart, is attending For the Love of Horror in October. So I probably wanted to buy this because of the cover. Having looked at it in a bit more detail and looked at the UK cover, which actually has her on the cover, I think my plan is actually to get her to sign that. But it's a 2-disc set. It's Region A. It's got a really long feature-length commentary, which has all kinds of interviews with the cast. It's got a new transfer, audio commentaries, never before seen footage. It's a pretty good film, is what I would say. Urban Legend, again, it's one that I came late to, purely because it just wasn't one that was on my spectrum. I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend kind of came out after the Scream Halloween H2O boom, and I was kind of in a Halloween psycho snobbery era, so it was kind of like, oh no, I don't want to watch those films. But this one's actually really good. So when I saw it a few years ago, I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. It is exactly what it sounds like, a killer, very much kind of in the vein of its counterparts like, Michael and Jason and things like that. They kill with the theme. The theme in this is that they are murdering in the style of urban legends. So there's a big scene at the beginning which has a fantastic cameo appearance involving the classic, there's someone in the back seat of your car. The person who was trying to run you off the road wasn't trying to hurt you. They were trying to warn you that there was somebody behind you on the seat. It's got Brad Dourif. It's got Danielle Harris in a very minor cameo. It's got Robert Englund again. It's a pretty good film. If you like late 90s kind of slasher movies, if you're a fan of I Know What You Did Last Summer, Halloween H2O, Scream, Urban Legends up there. The sequels are of varying quality, but I remember watching the trilogy and I certainly enjoyed the first one. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but at the time when it came out, the revelation of who the killer was somewhat of a surprise because you didn't get too many killers in that style. So this is a strong recommend, and again, I got it at a really good price, whether I actually wanted it or not. So that's going to do it for this whole video. I only wanted to fly through things very quickly. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe. I don't spend a lot of time on these videos in terms of prepping and looking into the historical backgrounds. That's stuff I want to do on other videos, but I think it's quite nice. As a collector, I'm always looking to see what other people are buying, just to see if there's a version of a film or a film I hadn't even known about. You know, share the wealth in terms of obviously, you know, finding these things. Hopefully there might be something here that you are happy to see, or you think, oh, I'll go look for that now. That's the whole point of it. Apologies for the fact that there wasn't a June haul video. I will try and keep up the trend. I think again, July was a very big month, not on purpose, but it's just the way it goes sometimes. I think August and September will probably be somewhat of a diminished volume, so apologies if this video has gone a little bit longer than normal, but hopefully all the information has appeared which will help you to make educated decisions whether or not you want to buy it. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe, and until next time, stay scared.